title, Making Decisions When Nothing Makes Sense, kind of equate growth in all things startup to, if we have any Game of Thrones fans here, it's like kind of like being Bran, or at least in the early seasons where you're kind of like, oh my God, I know everything, but I don't quite know what to do with all of this information. So hopefully things will become clearer later on. In classic startup fashion, this is the mission of OurPath. OurPath found its footing, I would say, commercially in 2016, 2017. The founders, Mike and Chris, I don't have a photo of them, but if you Google OurPath, Mike and Chris, you'll find them. They started the company on the basis of their interactions with people living with type 2 diabetes. So a couple of projects they had with their company really led them to seeing a lot of different inefficiencies in the way these people were receiving care. And they sort of, sat back and said to themselves, okay, I think we can probably build something that will, one, increase the frequency at which people are receiving, high quality services, but also make it sort of a fun thing. Because at the end of the day, a condition like type 2 diabetes is something you live with. It is a chronic condition. So they, at the end of the day, wanted to make something that was a companion to that lifestyle. So unpacking that mission a little bit further, starting with the bottom left-hand corner and the sort of third quadrant of the screen. I think something that's super central to this mission is that we're propelled by the people that we serve. So it is a health product. It is a tech product, but at the end of the day, on the other side, there are real people with a real problem that needs solving. So we start from there, and then how do we sort of help them address their issues? We do that together with our team, and we really help enable and empower these people, garner the knowledge, take the action to either augment or attenuate a certain health behavior, to ultimately achieve happiness and health and well-being. So that's us. Really quickly about me. First head of growth. I started as an intern in 2017, so my 2-year anniversary is coming up in October. Really exciting. Joined as employee number 9. We were in a closet in West London, and now we have a floor of an office building, which is quite nice and also quite airy. So thankfully, things have changed. We're still growing, so. We just have about under 4 million in funding. We're out right now, sort of grafting towards the next stage, which is quite exciting for us. So I think this talk in the next 15-ish minutes or so will sort of outline our experiences in growth and prioritization and things like that over the last 2 years. So in StartupLand, the way we see it, there's a couple of different approaches to growth. If you look at the headlines today about, companies in China, how, there's been a surge in the last 20 to 30 years, it talks a lot about, there's a lot of talk about speed, how fast these companies have really popped up, the amount of energy, so this idea of 996 culture, working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And there's a lot of talk about time, so this idea of hustle culture and really investing that time and energy into growth. And what's unfortunate, while these are important sort of ingredients to growth, the one thing that isn't really talked about is direction. Because you could sort of say at the end of the day, all these people at these companies are people, and sort of the speed at which we move, the energy we have, and the time we have is all relatively constant. Okay, sure, you might be strapped for resources if you're a 2-person team, but at the end of the day, what really leads to growth, we have found, has been making a series of right decisions. And the same goes with prioritization. Ultimately, we see growth as a prioritization exercise and game. So that's what will be the focus. So choosing the right thing. As I alluded to first, user first, always. Health for us in the context of OurPath is super personal. It's really easy when you're focused on moving numbers and metrics that you forget that there is an end user. So something we practice daily is just spreading feedback across the company. Whether that's a user who's really excited about their HbA1c levels sort of plummeting, or a new achievement they've really achieved, I guess, with OurPath. That's something we share very often. And the name of the game we found is just constantly engaging with these people. And I think, the most important thing for us is coupling that qualitative feedback with our user behaviors on our app. So we use tools like Mixpanel. We use things like Full Story. We found that coupling really powerful. So once we have a sort of understanding of who our people are, we continue to ask questions. So again, I think a company that has done this really well in the early days has been Airbnb. So if you Google some resources on how Airbnb courted their sort of earliest users, they just continued to ask them questions and get familiar with them. So it's the classic jobs to be done framework. What is the true problem they want to solve? And basically we ask them a series of questions like, why have you chosen us in particular if they're a current user? And if they're sort of engaged with us already, but they aren't a paying user, we ask them, okay, what can we do to help you achieve this thing you want done? In terms of frameworks, so something we have, we focus on a lot is MPS. So we couple this sort of qualitative number with quantitative number with qualitative feedback. So Net Promoter Score is a really useful metric for us. And we parse out the themes from the different buckets of people. So, you have detractors, neutrals, and promoters. And more often than not, it's a good signpost of understanding where the next growth levers are in terms of, okay, if there's a common theme of people who really like this certain thing, and they're all NPS 10s, we really double click and focus on that. And again, I can't stress enough, it's really important that this feedback is collected and evaluated regularly and communicated to the team, because more often than not, you have all of these fancy ways of collecting this data, but it just gets shelved and it doesn't get used, which is a really big tragedy. And then the next thing we focused on, we are focused on in terms of, we're moving now, if you're sort of seeing this narrative build from focusing on the user, we focus on their actions within our product. So I guess if this is starting from square one or ground zero, we really dive deep into, after profiling people, defining the core retention metric. So we really ask ourselves the question, what is the action that really points in the direction that people are actually receiving value? And so once we have that, which is a huge process in and of itself, so happy to chat about that afterwards, but after we have that, we ask ourselves, how are we charting this and these actions over time? So are the cohorts becoming stronger? Are they trending towards zero? We ask ourselves those questions on a daily basis. But obviously, the sort of really nice scenario is that, in fact, as you onboard more people, things will get better over time, which is the next point. So linear versus exponential growth. It's really easy to game for acquisition. So for example, we had a lot of success with email campaigns, and we had a target to hit, and we were kind of thinking of creative ways we can hit this target quickly. So we launched a promotion. And so the sort of output with that was, okay, sure, our conversion rate skyrocketed, we were really happy. But at the end of the day, it was a very short-termist point of view, because those cohorts of people that were onboarded using promo codes ended up churning. And that is another dangerous thing. I think, I myself have a background in sort of performance marketing, at least in the early days, and it was something that, we were optimizing for click-throughs, we were optimizing for conversion, but if you're not really optimizing for giving the person value and increasing that value delivered to them over time, things aren't going to be painted in quite a pretty picture. So I would definitely focus on that. And yeah, cohorts of users should be built on top of each other. So classic pirate metrics from 500, acquisition, activation, retention, referral revenue, those things. We're really focused on retention and engagement. So yeah, with the onboarding of each new user, the experience hopefully should become better over time. So how do we get there faster? So again, we talked about this concept of speed. It's not necessarily the speed at which you're churning out results that matters to us. The thing we're really focused on is the speed at which we're learning, which I think is there's a really big difference. You can ship an experiment quickly, some flashy product feature, really hoping to optimize for a certain action. But if that doesn't end up in you learning some valuable thing moving forward, this is something we don't really focus on. But moving back up the slide, all the tests that we launch are definitely hypothesis-led. We try to lean towards 10x ideas, and we definitely evaluate unpacked. Yeah, so I guess this is the bit that's most useful for us in terms of prioritization. We first look at the data. What do they say? How are users behaving? What is the thing that we want them to achieve? What is the thing they want to achieve? How are we bringing them value? And how does this age over time? So again, I think it's really important with every experiment that it has a time horizon beyond 1 to 4 or 5 weeks, at least in sort of the game of chess and growth. So yeah, we acknowledge risks, and we're not afraid to take them. So we outlaid them from the get-go. But again, it's always about learning from these outputs. So another sort of thing is like comfort with change. So a thing that's not really spoken about, I think, but it's done really well. Elad Gil has some thoughts on like scaling and growth and team, and that's a thing that we have found has really helped us as we expand. So I think most of us in the room are probably either first-time founders or repeat founders. So there might be some veterans dotted out in here, but we really focus on hiring the right people. A good heuristic for determining whether or not a person is the right fit for the company is, would you want to be managed by this person? Would you want to spend, it's the classic like management consulting, framework, like do you want to spend 3 hours in an airport with them during a layover? It's really important for us actually, because at the end of the day, we try to take that and, everyone is smart, everyone is talented, but the amount of time that you spend, in an early team with someone is like super intense, and like it's a lot. It's a lot. So with that, after we've compiled our team, we think about understanding the environment and basically opening channels of feedback. So things are, changes are stressful, growth is stressful, but understanding what stresses people out is also stressful. So we try to be as honest as possible. Basically, we build a culture in which no one's really afraid to share their ideas, because we're solving really difficult problems, everyone in this room. So we really try to cultivate something, or a system in which we can have difficult conversations. And another sort of secret we found over the last 2 years is that there's a great power in physical environment and colliding with one another. So a classic case for us was there are some desk vacancies with a team, and we pretty much merged two sort of incongruent teams, and since then there's been a lot of cross collaboration. There's been a lot of energy, and I can't really stress enough how important that energy is. And when you launch experiments, when you have to prioritize, when you have to do the sort of startup things. So apart from that, we encourage leadership and learning. So again, I think Mark Zuckerberg in the early days talks about building an environment in which you learn as fast as possible. I think a takeaway from this is just literally focusing on, what did we do, how did we do it, what can we do better next time? Those are really important questions. And yeah, creating a platform in which people feel empowered and excels their rate of learning is really invaluable. So yeah, I would prepare for the good that comes with people feeling these things, feeling curious, and feeling able. Yeah, so the way we have done growth at OurPath, we started as a really small team. There was a point in time where I didn't even know what growth was. And so it's quite funny. I mean, we pretty much get together every Tuesday and we'd say, hey, like, we have this idea. What do you think about this? This number will move up or down. And I think with age came a little bit more maturity in terms of, it wasn't that we were launching experiments to, changing the color of a button. It's a classic case, to like optimize click-throughs. It's really, okay, how can we make this product really stand out for a certain type of person? And how can we take that person once they're onboarded, how can we activate them? And how can we in turn help them become more valuable and receive more value from us? So yeah, now we are in smaller meetings. We have key stakeholders involved with open communications, so we always keep lines of communications open. This is really important because it really helps, one, with the engagement during these meetings and how we smooth things out and how we prioritize moving forward. And yeah, so once we have a basic system, we have our users, we have our way of collecting feedback, we have our core retention metric defined, and we understand that cohorts must become better over time for growth. And then we have the team in place. We all, at the end of the day, it all circles back to the user. So collecting feedback is great, but involving users throughout the building process is better. I do realize you can over-rotate on collecting feedback and actioning on that. So that's an important caveat there. But making a series of smart and strategic decisions, if something doesn't quite make sense, if a user is kind of anomalous, that's probably something we wouldn't action. But more often than not, they'll tell you the direction in which to go. And yeah, for us, it's really important to celebrate your users, because after all, that's why we're here. It's about them. So yeah, coming to conclusions. So we did a thing. What happened? So we asked ourselves, what was the hypothesis? What was the metric we were trying to move? What was the direction we wanted to move towards? Were there any gaps in the data? And then we asked about the sort of like experiment design and ask if next time there's a better way it can be designed. So taking the temperature, so basically saying no or not right now. So we have a really good understanding of how our system works, how our team works. We sort of ask ourselves, okay, why is this still the thing we want to work on? Why is this still the thing that will essentially grow your company or take your users where they want to go? And we also ask ourselves, like, why are we willing to spend the time, energy, and effort into this particular thing? So where do we go from here? So again, we're sort of guided by data. Again, I know I focused primarily on qualitative feedback, but it is a mix of both. So taking that mixed sort of methods approach is really important. Having that direction, so why are people saying that we should move in this direction, is really important. And then the next thing we do is ask ourselves for next time on the org side, are there any barriers to learning, whether that's experiment design or sort of just process and how we launched or shipped the thing in general. How can we learn as much as possible from what we did? And then can we reduce any more barriers for the user to achieve that thing, to create lift? And then, if we do more of this thing, hopefully, we're moving more in the right direction. So we'll focus on that. But all in all, if you really take a close eye or a close ear to what people are saying or seeing what they're doing, things really should pan out, and that's how we've sort of grown so far. But yeah, I hope that was, it was sort of a crash course in the 2 years of what we've done with growth at OurPath. But I hope that was useful. Say hello. Yeah, I'm at John Sirisuth on all social channels. So let's talk. Let's spread ideas. Good stuff. Good luck on you.